Per multiple sources, top Biden aides are in heated internal debates on whether to issue preemptive pardons for some Trump critics. Names that have been floated include Dr. Anthony Fauci, former Republican Congresswoman Liz Cheney, and Representative Adam Schiff.
The step could protect those individuals from being prosecuted by Trump. I mean, someone like Dr. Fauci perhaps should fear for good reason, because he might be culpable for a policy that killed millions of people.
You guys are aware of the term hiding in plain sight, right? So this is the best representation of Anthony Fauci and the emergence of COVID during his time. Remember when President Donald Trump's term started in 2017? Anthony Fauci, he made a huge announcement, something that was just swept under the rug as nothing more than scientific talking points. Y'all remember that? Years after the fact, and we suddenly realized that he was telling us about the future, a future that he helped to shape with gain-of-function research, guys, a future where Trump's first term would be sidelined by a worldwide pandemic. Watch.
I thought I would bring that perspective to the topic today, is the issue of pandemic preparedness. And if there's one message that I want to leave with you today, based on my experience, and you'll see that in a moment, is that there is no question that there will be a challenge to the coming administration in the arena of infectious diseases, both chronic infectious diseases in the sense of already ongoing disease, and we have certainly a large burden of that, but also there will be a surprise outbreak. And I hope by the end of my relatively short presentation, you will understand why the history of the last 32 years that I've been the director of NIAID will tell the next administration that there's no doubt in anyone's mind that they will be faced with the challenges that their predecessors were faced with.
Now, it's hard to say that Fauci was surprised about the pandemic, especially since he literally predicted it years before it happened. A virus that came from a lab in Wuhan, China, one that he helped in funding. So I guess it just kind of makes sense as to why President Biden is thinking about giving him a preemptive pardon, although millions around the world might not be as forgiving. And this is what I meant about something hiding in plain sight. Dr. Anthony Fauci literally talked about a surprise outbreak years before COVID-19.
My understanding from your testimony to us, it says that the NIH process for awarding grants is that basically research proposal goes to peer review committee to receive a priority score. Then it goes to an advisory council for NIH personnel. It receives a final, basically the group votes on it, and then eventually it ends up on your desk for signature. Right. Now, you said in that sometimes, if I recall correctly, those grants are often approved in block, in mass, when they're voted on, and then you sign off on them.
That's correct.
This is one of the things that's really troubling to the American people, because they look at their lives being destroyed, and there's no one to hold accountable, because these systems of accountability have become systems of plausible deniability. And so your name is on every single grant, but yet you absolve yourself of any sort of responsibility by saying, well, it goes to this committee that's, that has a number of people on it, and they're approved in block, and so there's no accountability for anything, any of the taxpayer dollars that are going forth.
I disagree with you, Congressman, because if you look at the number of grants, we fund thousands of grants. It would be physically impossible for me to go through every single grant in a detailed way to understand it.
They knew for a fact that it was happening, and it was set to be released within the first presidential term of Donald Trump, which again would ask the question if Fauci should be held liable for what he did to the country and to the world. But here's something that I found connected to vaccine enthusiast Dr. Peter Hotez. Much like Dr. Anthony Fauci, Hotez is warning us again of another incoming outbreak. And I want you guys to listen very carefully as to when he expects this to begin.
Here's the reason why we need to care about this stuff, Nicole, is that we have some big picture stuff coming down the pike starting on January 21st. Mr. Bloomberg mentioned H5N1. That I'm really worried about. It's all over wild birds on the western part of the United States and going up in the north. It's getting into the poultry. We're seeing sporadic human cases, no human-to-human transmission yet, but that could happen. It's in the cattle, it's in the milk, and that's just the beginning. We have another major coronavirus likely brewing in Asia. We've had SARS in 2002, SARS-2, COVID-19 in 2019. And we know these viruses are jumping from bats to people thousands of times a year. But there's still more. We know that we have a big problem with mosquito-transmitted viruses all along the Gulf Coast, where I am here in Texas. So we're expecting dengue and possibly Zika virus coming back, or a Puche virus, maybe even yellow fever. And there's more. Then we have all this sharp rise in vaccine preventable diseases going up because of, in part, the anti-vaccine activism that's so prominent right now. We have a 5-fold rise in pertussis cases, whooping cough over the last year, 15 measles outbreaks this year. We've got polio that's been in the wastewater in New York State. All that's going to come crashing down on January 21st on the Trump administration. We need a really, really good team to be able to handle this.
January 21st, which is in line with President-elect Trump's first day back in office. Is this just a random coincidence? And MSNBC is giving this guy a platform to spread this information out to the public. Now, what's really weird here is that he's talking as if it's all going to go down by next year. So I guess all these viruses just kind of like took a break during the latter years of President Biden's term, right? That makes sense, right? Which brings me to some breaking news. California just declared a state of emergency. The reason? Bird flu.
California's state of emergency tonight will give public health officials more resources and people to fight the bird flu virus that spread from animals to humans and made dozens of farm workers sick. This year alone, tens of millions of birds have been killed in America from exposure to the avian virus, and 61 people have already gotten sick, half of them in California. But tonight is the first time authorities are reporting that an American is seriously sick. They're only sharing that the sick patient, now hospitalized, lives in Louisiana, is over 65, had underlying medical conditions, and caught the virus from sick and dead birds in their backyard and not on a farm.
What is striking here is that this is the first serious illness, one that required hospitalization. Most earlier cases were mild or asymptomatic. Currently, there is no human-to-human spread, and this is very important because the risk to the general public still is very low.
Most of the human cases have come from the disease spreading to cows, chickens, and turkeys, and then to farm workers who worked with the sick animals. It's one of the reasons why the price of eggs is up more than 37% since last year.
It's like clockwork with California Governor Gavin Newsom. With 34 alleged human cases in the state, Gavin Newsom has now declared a state of emergency. In a statement, Gavin Newsom said that this proclamation is a targeted action to ensure government agencies have the resources and the flexibility that they need to respond quickly to this outbreak. Now, again, guys, we got to remember what Fauci said back then. And we also need to remember what these people are trying to tell us right now. We are so close to President-elect Trump getting back in the White House. Isn't it strange that we're hearing the same narrative all over again? It's like they're putting in the same play as they did back in 2017 because the multiple legal cases didn't work. The 2 assassination attempts were unsuccessful, and Kamala Harris just couldn't win even with all of the positive news from legacy media. Is this the last resort? Could it all be coming together yet again? Now the question is, will you comply? Switching gears just for a second here to J6, and we got Stephen A. Smith suddenly calling out the Democratic Party. Now guys, I covered this in a previous live stream where the Democrat is seen to be changing his mind about the Capitol riot and possibly going full-blown MAGA. Make sure you guys check that video out right after this one. As always, appreciate you guys being here. Thanks so much for hitting the like button and subscribing. We'll see you guys on the next one.